Right, good day everyone, and welcome to Cricket South Africa's umpiring introduction course. Today is lecture 2 of 3. My name is Tom Mokorosi, and as usual, my co-presenter for the course is Abdullah Steenkamp. I will be taking you through laws 16 all the way to 20, after which we will take a 10 to 15 minute break, and then Abdullah will take us through laws 21 through to 24. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, please take note of the meeting protocols on the screen. And then today we will be having what we call quiz questions throughout the presentation. And the way the quiz questions will work is that the question will be asked by myself and Abdullah. It will be in the form of a video or a picture, and you will need to type in your answer into the chat box. So to make sure that you are able to use the chat box, I'm going to ask all of you to quickly type into the chat box where you are tuning in from today. So I'm going to start, and I am going to type into the chat box Cape Town, because that's where myself and Abdullah are presenting from. So this way we'll also get to know where everybody's from, and we can greet each other. Right, so they have typed in Cape Town into the chat box, and if you can all type into the chat box where you're from, and then you will be able to, throughout the lecture, also answer the quiz questions that we have for you today. Law 16 is the first law that I'm going to take us through today. It is the result. I'm sure you all know in cricket, as Abdullah mentioned to us on Monday, we have a 2 innings per side match or a 1 innings per side match. So how are victories achieved in those two different formats? Law tells us that in a 2 innings per side match, the side which has scored a total of runs in excess of that scored in the 2 completed innings of the opposing side shall win the match. In a 1 innings per side match, the side which has scored in its 1 innings a total of runs in excess of that scored by the opposing side in its 1 completed innings shall win the match. So obviously a 2 innings match, an example of that is a test match, and a 1 innings match, we have generally 2 formats that are widely played around the world. That is a T20 match and a 50 over match. Coming into popularity lately is the T10 format, which is also an example of a 1 innings per side match. So we can also have a tie in cricket. What is the definition of a tie? Law tells us that the result of a match shall be a tie when all innings have been completed and the scores are equal. The important point about a tie is that all innings must have been completed. Abdullah took us through how an innings can be completed on Monday. It is mainly when a side is all out, or in the scenario of a limited overs match is when the overs for an innings are completed. A draw, by definition, is when we have a match has not been determined in any of the ways stated previously. So if it's not a win and if it's not a tie, then it will be a draw. We normally get draws in 4-day provincial matches as well as test matches when the side bowling second cannot get all 10 wickets of the side batting second, and the side batting second cannot reach the target inside of the 5th day's play. So that is a broader definition of a drawn cricket match. How do we as commentators, for example, state a result? Law tells us that if the side batting last wins the match without losing all of its wickets, the result shall be stated as a win by the number of wickets still then to fall. So we know that a completed innings means that a side is all out when their 10 wickets have fallen. So law tells us here that if a side batting last wins the match without losing all its wickets, so say for example, South Africa reaches its total against India, chasing 200 runs in a T20 match, having lost 6 wickets, then South Africa have won by 10 minus 6, which is 4 wickets. That is how many wickets they had in hand when they reached the target. That is how a win batting second or batting last is stated. If the side fielding last wins the match, the result shall be stated as win by runs. So we saw last week that India won the final T20 international against South Africa by a mammoth 134 runs, if I'm not mistaken. India had scored 284. Excuse me if my memory doesn't serve me exactly correct in terms of the numbers. And South Africa scored 150. 284 minus 150 is a winning margin of 134 runs. If the match is decided by one side conceding defeat or refusing to play, the result shall be stated as match conceded or match awarded, whichever the case might be. So let's go on to watch a video explaining the circumstances around the only ever test match recorded in history as a match awarded. Abdullah, please notify me if the sound is not working.
More than 2,300 test matches have been played. Over 1,500 of these have ended in a result. Over 700 have been drawn, 2 have been tied, and only 1 has ended in a forfeit.
The thing I remember about the forfeit test is none of us had a clue what was going on, really.
According to law 1632, a match shall be lost by a side which, in the opinion of the umpires, refuses to play. On August 20, 2006, this rule was invoked for the first time on an afternoon that swung wildly between high drama and farce. An hour before tea on the 4th day, at the end of the 56th over, of England's second innings, umpires Darrell Hare and Billy Doctrove asked for a change of ball.
It's what the reserve umpires came out with a new box of balls. It was clear they were changing the ball. No big deal there. But instead of asking the bowling side to choose the new one, he asked the batting side. And you think, oh, hello, interesting.
The umpires then awarded England 5 penalty runs, confirming that they had pulled Pakistan up for tampering with the ball. The trouble was there was no evidence, no jelly, no dirt, no sandpaper.
A lot of people that looked at that ball have different opinions. Some feel it was clearly tampered with, and some think it was more than just playable. It was a good-looking ball. Others think you can see some evidence of scratching, but none that suggests it's been done on purpose and by hand, or even by a foreign object. So very mixed views.
It was after the tea break, taken more than 15 overs, after the 5-run penalty, that things really escalated. The umpires walked out, the English batsmen walked out, the Pakistanis didn't.
They felt hugely wronged. They weren't sure that whether they wanted to come out.
After waiting for 20 minutes, the umpires walked to the Pakistan dressing room, came back a few minutes later and took the bails off.
And the matches have been aborted or abandoned or cancelled or no, wrong, none of that. We hear the match has been awarded to England. Wow.
That wasn't the end of it either. After a protest lasting almost an hour, and following discussions with match referee Mike Proctor, Inzamam al-Haq finally leads the Pakistan team out again. This time, though, the umpires stay put. They've made their decision, and they're sticking by it.
My view of that was that it was very inflexible. Mike Proctor was the match referee in a very difficult position. I think there should have been an instruction from on high, from the chief executive or chairman of ICC, that this is a unique situation because of the unproven circumstances. In a proven circumstance of a tampered ball and the side refusing to come out, fair enough. But this was unproven.
Several hours after the bails were taken off, the ICC and the English and Pakistan cricket boards confirm in a joint statement that the match had indeed been forfeited. The hints kept on coming. With no evidence to back up the accusation, the ICC dropped the ball tampering charges. But Inzamam was banned for 4 one-dayers for refusing to lead his team out. They also removed Hare from international duty, who in turn threatened to sue the ICC and the PCB for racial discrimination. 2 years later, the ICC overturned the result from a Pakistan loss to a draw. But the MCC refused to recognize this.
It was all incredibly nasty and another stain on the game. And there's never been any concrete proof that Pakistan were in the wrong anyway.
To date, this remains the only scorecard in history to state England awarded the match, opposition refused to play. In the end, though, there was only one real loser: cricket itself.
A couple of notes to point from that video and that match. As players, it's important, even if you feel hard done by, whether it's by the umpires or the opposition, do not forfeit the game. Continue to play under dispute, and then the dispute or the issues will be resolved after the match, but do continue to play in the game so that there is no forfeit, because as law has it in black and white, if a team refuses to play, then they lose the match by default. It is awarded to the opposing side. Then secondly, from an umpiring point of view, we need to be 100% certain that a team has done wrong before we punish them. So let's not be hasty and act on suspicions. Let us act on facts and apply the law according to what is factually evident to us. Next law that I'm taking you through, law 17, the over. Number of balls to be bowled in an over. Yes, you're quite right. 6 legal deliveries constitute an over. The ball shall be bowled from each end alternately in overs of 6 balls. How does an over start? An over has started when the bowler starts his or her run-up, or if he or she has no run-up, then the over starts when his or her bowling action starts, which is when the back foot lands for the first delivery of that over. When are deliveries not to count as a legal delivery in an over? Law tells us that a ball shall not count as one of the 6 legal deliveries of the over unless it is delivered. A ball delivered by the bowler shall not count if it is called dead or is to be considered dead before the striker has had an opportunity to play it. If the striker is not ready for the delivery and it is bowled, or if the striker is distracted while receiving a delivery, that ball shall be called and signaled dead ball and will not be a legal delivery in the over. If a ball is a no ball or a wide, it shall also need to be rebowled because it is not considered a legal delivery in the over. When a player returns to the field without permission from the umpires and comes into contact with the ball automatically becomes dead. There are 5 penalty runs awarded to the batting side and other punishment that we will get into in later laws, but that delivery will not count as a legal delivery in the over. When there is an instance of illegal fielding, that delivery will also not count as a legal delivery in the over. If there is a deliberate attempt to distract the striker, or there is deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of either batter, that ball will also not count as a legal delivery in the over. Any deliveries other than those listed on the previous slide shall be known as valid balls, and only valid balls shall count towards the 6 balls of the over. When 6 valid balls have been bowled and when the ball becomes dead, the umpire shall call over before leaving his or her wicket at the bowler's end and walking towards square leg for the start of the next over, where he or she will be the striker's end umpire. What happens if umpires miscount in an over? Law tells us that if the umpire miscounts the number of valid balls, the over as counted by the umpires shall stand. What does that mean? Let's see an example. If having miscounted, the umpires allows an over to continue after 6 valid balls have been bowled, he or she may subsequently call over as the ball becomes dead after any delivery, even if that delivery is not a valid ball. So if, for example, we have had 6 legal deliveries bowled, and then there is a 7th delivery that is bowled, and that 7th delivery happens to be a no ball, usually we would have to re-bowl a no ball And in the playing conditions of limited overs cricket, there would be a free hit for that extra delivery. But if we discover that the no ball that was bowled was actually the 7th ball bowled in the over, then law tells us in point number B that we need to call over immediately after that 7th ball when we are notified or when we realize that it was the 7th ball of the over. So the runs scored off that 7th delivery, if a wicket was taken, or if any other incidents occurred on that 7th delivery, those details will stand and be counted by the scorers, but there will be no further deliveries allowed. Can a bowler change ends? Yes, a bowler shall be allowed to change ends as often as desired, provided that he or she does not bowl 2 overs consecutively, nor bowl parts of each of 2 consecutive overs in the same innings. So you will notice that in any game, in the same innings, the same bowler won't bowl 2 consecutive overs from the same end. The only exception I've seen to this law is in the 100, which is a competition played in England where they bowl what they call sets of 5 balls, and they are allowed 2 sets to be bowled consecutively from one end by the same bowler. But all other playing conditions for all other tournaments do not allow a bowler to bowl 2 consecutive overs from the same end, or 2 consecutive overs from either end in the same innings. When is an over considered to be completed? Other than at the end of an innings, a bowler shall finish an over in progress unless he or she is incapacitated or suspended under any of the laws. If for any reason other than the end of an innings, an over is left uncompleted at the start of an interval or interruption, it shall be completed on resumption of play. Abdullah gave us an example on Monday where if a wicket falls when 3 minutes or less than 3 minutes are remaining before lunch, we take lunch immediately, and then we come back after lunch and we complete that over after lunch. So what happens when a bowler is incapacitated or suspended during an innings? Law tells us that if for any reason a bowler is incapacitated while running up to deliver the first ball of an over, or is incapacitated during an over, the umpire shall call and signal dead ball, and another bowler shall complete the over from the same end, provided that that bowler has not bowled any part of the previous over and will not bowl any part of the following over. That way, that new bowler will not bowl 2 consecutive overs in that innings. That is law 17 done. We now move on to law 18, which is scoring runs. Law tells us that the score shall be reckoned by runs, and a run is scored in 3 different ways. The first way, so often as the batters at any time while the ball is in play have crossed and made good their ground from end to end, that shall be counted as a run each time they make good their ground on the opposite end. When a boundary is scored, that is the second way that runs can be scored. And when penalty runs are awarded, that is the third way that a team's total increases in runs. What about short runs? A short run is if a batter fails to make good his or her ground in turning for a further run. So you cannot have a short run if you only attempt and complete one run. A short run is on turning for a second or third or fourth run, where either batter does not ground any part of his or her bat or person over the popping crease before running for the next run. Although a short run shortens the succeeding one, the latter, if completed, shall not be regarded as short. And a striker setting off for the first run from in front of the popping crease may do so without penalty. A lot of batters, for example, David Miller, bat far out of their crease. And law tells us here that if David Miller hits the ball from his position, say half a meter outside of the popping crease, through the covers, he does not have to go back into his crease before he starts the run. He can start running from the position where he hit the ball from and complete the run at the opposite end. Let's watch a video that will take us through the difference between unintentional short runs and deliberate short runs, how to identify deliberate short runs, and what the punishment is for deliberate short runs.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This video is a new addition to the analysis series. Let's get started. On 15th of November 2018, second day of second test match between Sri Lanka and England, a strange incident happened. Let's watch the footage. Looks like a normal short run case, isn't it? Well, that's not the case. Let's see what umpire's decision was. Hugh did not understand what he signaled. He initially disallowed all the runs scored by the batsman on that delivery. Further, he informed the batsman about deliberate short running and awarded 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see what the cricket law has to say about running short. There are two categories in this, unintentional and deliberate. Let's take a look at unintentional short running first. If a batsman runs short, then the umpire shall call and signal short run as soon as the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. For example, if they run 2 and if they run 1 short, then only 1 run will be scored. Now, let's take a look at deliberate short run. Cricket law states that if either umpire considers that one or both the batsmen deliberately ran short, then wait for the ball to become dead, and further disallow all the runs scored on that delivery, return the batsmen to their original end, and award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see why the umpire considered this incident as deliberate short running. As you can see, both the batsmen start running, and then striker Roshan Silva feels that the ball will reach the boundary. But upon seeing Moeen Ali has stopped the ball, he runs back to the striker's end. But in between, the striker Roshan Silva did not ground the bat at all, which made the umpire to consider this as deliberate short run. If he had at least tried to ground the bat, then most likely that the umpire would not have considered this as a deliberate short run. 5-run penalty for this feels a bit harsh, isn't it? Now let's see why exactly this law exists. In an IPL match between Mumbai Indians and Kings 11, while chasing 231, Mumbai Indians needed 16 runs of the last over. Kieron Pollard, who faces the first ball of the over, strikes the ball and sets off for the run, thinking that he can come back for 2. But upon realizing that he cannot make it, he runs back to the striker's end without completing the first run. And it can be seen that he did that deliberately as he wanted to get back the strike. It is clearly unfair as he got 1 run and also he came back to the strike. To prevent the players from doing such things, this law exists. But in Roshan Silva's case, he was not trying to gain any unfair advantage. But since he did not make any effort to complete the first run, it was ruled deliberate short run. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, then hit the like button and share with all your friends. If you have not subscribed yet, then don't forget to subscribe for more such contents.
When do batters return to their original ends? When the striker is dismissed in any of the modes of dismissals listed below, the not out batter shall return to his or her original end. If the striker is out bowled, then the not out striker, non-striker stays at the non-striker's end. Similarly, when the striker is out stumped, the non-striker will stay at the non-striker's end. If the striker is out hit the ball twice, if the striker is out leg before wicket, if the striker is out hit wicket, the non-striker will stay at their non-striker's end. This is a new one. It came into play in October 2022. If a striker is out caught, even if the two batters crossed while the ball is in the air, law now tells us that the non-striker who is not out needs to return to his or her original end. And so the new batter coming in will be on strike. That is, of course, if it's still the same over. When the striker is out obstructing the field, if the obstruction or distraction prevented a catch from being taken, then once again, the non-striker will return to his or her original end at the non-striker's end. The second last law that I will be delivering this evening is Law 19, boundaries. And here we'll start our quiz questions for the day. How do we determine the boundary of the field of play? Law tells us that before the toss, the umpire shall determine the boundary of the field of play, which shall be fixed for the duration of the match. So once the match starts, the boundaries cannot change, cannot be brought in or taken out or moved in any way. The boundary shall be determined such that no part of any sight screen will at any stage of the match be within the field of play. I have seen fields where the sight screen is part of the boundary as per the law. That is allowed because it's not inside the field of play. However, a recent International Cricket Council playing condition states that any obstacle outside the field of play cannot be closer than 3 yards or 2.74 meters from the boundary rope. So then sight screens should now be at least 2.74 meters away from the boundary rope. Wherever practical, the boundary shall be marked by means of a continuous white line or an object in contact with the ground. The common objects used are ropes as well as boundary cushions, also known as Toblerones because of their triangular shape, similar to the chocolate. If the boundary is marked by a white line, the edge of the line nearest the pitch shall be the boundary. And we will have some graphics to illustrate these points in future slides. If the boundary is marked by a white line, an object such as a flag, post, or board used merely to highlight the position of a line marked on the ground must be placed beyond the boundary and is not itself to be considered as the boundary. So here we have a white line, a continuous white line demarcating a boundary, and the inside edge of that white line is the boundary. So if the ball lands on the full on any part of that line, then it will be a boundary 6 because the inside edge of that boundary is actually where the boundary starts, the inside edge of the line. What if we have a fence? The inside edge of that picket fence would be where the boundary starts. Again, not common in this day and age because of the danger that a fence actually has in terms of players sliding into it. Similar to the line, the inside edge of the rope is where the boundary is depicted on that picture. If there are posts or flags which are depicting where the boundary is, the posts and the flags are not themselves to be considered the boundary. They are merely an indication of where the boundary is. The boundary is still the white line, and the inside edge of that boundary is the inside edge of the line is the boundary. The boundary is marked by means of an object that is in contact with the ground. The boundary will be the edge of the grounded part of the object which is nearest the pitch. So if you've got boundary cushions and you don't have a white line underneath that boundary cushion, then that boundary cushion, the inside edge of that boundary cushion is the boundary. Where there is no white line or object providing continuous marking, objects such as flags, posts, or boards may be used to mark specific points on the boundary. The boundary shall be the imaginary straight line on the ground joining the two nearest marked points. So on a few fields where unfortunately boundary ropes get stolen, I've seen teams using coaching cones to mark the boundary with about 5 meters distance between each cone. So what the law is telling us here is that we need to imagine a straight line between each cone, and that is demarcating the boundary. You would think it's a round line from boundary, from cone to cone, but law tells us no. We must imagine a straight line in between those cones. A boundary that cannot be identified shall be determined by the umpires before the toss. So when the two captains come together for the toss and one or both umpires are in attendance, they need to discuss if there's any uncertainties about the boundary. They need to clarify them there and then. And what is common in this conversation is to ask the home captain what the custom is for the boundary if it is not clear and obvious for all to see. Law goes on to tell us that an obstacle within the field of play shall not be regarded as a boundary unless so determined by the umpires before the toss. So coming up shortly, we will have a video of a shot played in Pietermaritzburg where the ball hit a tree that is within the field of play, and that tree is regarded as a boundary because of the custom that they have had in Pietermaritzburg all the years playing at the Pietermaritzburg Oval with that tree inside the boundary rope. What's important is that when a team plays there for the first time, they should be informed by the umpires that the custom is for 4 runs, whether the ball hits the tree at the bottom while rolling or at the very highest of branches while flying in the air. A person or animal coming onto the field of play while the ball is in play shall not be regarded as a boundary unless the umpires determine otherwise at the time that contact between the ball and such a person or animal is made, and the decision shall be made for each separate occurrence. So there's no blanket rule that applies in those scenarios. So for example, if a batter hits a cover drive very hard and it goes through the covers, it's rolling towards the boundary, and just as it's about to reach the boundary, a dog runs onto the field of play and the ball hits the dog and the ball stops and doesn't go over the boundary rope. Law tells us here that the bowler's end umpire should decide whether he or she thinks the ball would have gone over the boundary rope if it wasn't for that interception by the dog. And if the umpire feels that it would have gone over the boundary rope, then he or she can call and signal boundary 4. So let's have a look at the video of Matthew Boast, who was playing for SA Under-19 against KwaZulu-Natal Inland at the Pietermaritzburg Oval in October 2022. The commentators take us through this particular incident very well in terms of how they describe the boundary.
It's a single that was brilliantly timed. There we go. That's good, Miles. Oh, but it might only be 4 if it touches the tree. That's the biggest 4 you'll ever see. Christo,
Ahmed, cut the trees down here.
That's 100-meter 4.
Cut the trees down, brother.
The best part is when the analysts do the projection like they do in golf. It will be showing a carry of 110 meters, but it's only 4 runs.
The biggest 4 I've seen.
So it's not easy to spot the ball, but the ball there hit the highest branch and the highest leaf on that tree. It carried or would have carried easily over the boundary rope. But because of the custom in place at Pietermaritzburg Oval, the umpire correctly signaled boundary 4. Even the fielder next to the tree was signaling boundary 4 because they are all aware of this custom. So whether the ball hits the tree while rolling along the ground or it hits the tree at the highest point of the tree, because it's inside the field of play, they have decided that it would always be boundary 4. Okay. We all know that there are 2 types of boundaries. Let us delve into their detail. A boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. Very important point. And is first grounded beyond the boundary without having been in contact with the ground within the field of play. This shall apply even if the ball has previously touched a fielder. A boundary 4 will be scored when a ball that is grounded beyond the boundary, whether struck by the bat or not, that's also important, was first grounded within the boundary or has not been struck by the bat. So with these 2 definitions in mind, I have our first quiz question for the day. And I want you to type into the chat box Q1 and then your answer. So my scenario goes as follows. A fast bowler bowls the ball and it is a bouncer or a short pitch delivery that bounces quite high. The striker attempts a hook shot but misses the ball, does not hit the bat, does not hit the gloves. Instead, the ball goes over the boundary and lands in the pavilion without ever touching the field. Which 2 signals will the bowler's end umpire make in this scenario? I'll repeat the scenario again. A fast bowler bowls the ball. A bouncer that rushes the batter. The striker attempts a pull shot, misses it with bat and glove. Instead, the ball touches or grazes the top of the striker's helmet and flies over the boundary rope into the stand without ever having touched the outfield. So which 2 signals will the bowler's end umpire make? Type in Q1 and your answer, listing the 2 signals that the bowler's end umpire should make in that scenario. Straight on to quiz question number 2. Is this a boundary 6 or is the striker out caught? I'm going to play it without sound because the commentators give away the answer. Simple question. Type in Q2 and then either type in boundary 6 or out caught. And we're going to have a look at this a couple of times before you need to put in your answer. So the fielder here has caught the ball inside the field of play, throws it up, goes outside, jumps up while he palms the ball back into the field of play and completes the catch inside the field of play. So the question here is this a boundary 6 or is the striker out caught? You need to type in Q2, boundary 6 or out caught. Q2, boundary 6 or out caught. And I'm going to play that first part of it for you one last time. And you can decide if that is a boundary 6 or out court. Last law that I am presenting this afternoon before we go on a break is dead ball. Now, the ball can either automatically become dead in certain circumstances, or we as umpires need to call and signal dead ball. Let us first look at the scenarios where the ball automatically becomes dead. Law tells us that the ball automatically becomes dead when it is finally settled in the hands of the wicketkeeper or of the bowler. That is a very subjective term, finally settled, and we will unpack that term a little bit later in a video. The ball is automatically dead when a boundary is scored. Nothing further can happen when a boundary is scored. The ball automatically becomes dead when a batter is dismissed. In baseball, they have what's called a double play, where you can get 2 batters out on the same delivery, but in cricket, that is not possible. Why? Because the ball automatically becomes dead when 1 batter is dismissed. The ball automatically becomes dead when, whether played or not, it becomes trapped between the bat and person of a batter, or between items of his or her clothing or equipment. Whether played or not, if the ball lodges in the clothing or equipment of a batter or the clothing of an umpire, it immediately becomes dead. As mentioned earlier, when a player returns to the field without permission of the umpires and comes into contact with the ball automatically becomes dead. It is good umpiring practice, because a lot of players don't know this law, to call and signal dead ball, but the law tells us that the ball automatically becomes dead the instant that the fielder who has returned to the field without permission comes into contact with the ball. Also, in an instant of illegal fielding, the ball immediately becomes dead when the instant of illegal fielding is made. And in those 2 instances, the ball shall not count as one of the over. It needs to be rebowled. If the ball goes through the wicketkeeper's legs and hits the helmet behind the wicketkeeper that is on the field, on the ground, belonging to the fielding side, then again the ball automatically becomes dead. But because not all the players will see the ball hitting the helmet, it is good umpiring practice to call and signal dead ball in this scenario. Of course, when the match is concluded, then the ball automatically becomes dead. Nothing further can happen after that. Very importantly, neither the call of over nor the call of time is to be made until the ball is dead. So you, as the bowlers and umpire, need to be patient, not be in a hurry to call over or to call time to go for lunch or whatever the case might be. You need to wait until the ball is dead before you call over. This for me is the most important part of the dead ball law in terms of when the ball automatically becomes dead. The ball shall be considered to be dead when it is clear to the bowler's end umpire that the fielding side and both batters at the wicket have ceased to regard the ball as in play. So we as umpires need to read the room and check that everybody has considered the ball dead before we consider the ball dead. And as I mentioned earlier, whether the ball is finally settled or not is for the umpire to decide, and we need to use the body language of the fielding side and both batters at the wicket as a clue as to whether the ball is finally settled or not. Let's have a look at an infamous incident that happened last year during the Ashes series, England against Australia, a test match at the home of cricket, Lord's Cricket Ground, where the batter or the striker considered the ball dead, but the fielding side definitely did not consider the ball dead.
Yeah, same old Aussies, always cheating.
There were ugly scenes at the home of cricket as Australians left the field at lunch on the final day. Normally genteel long room reached boiling point as the members vented their disgust.
Some of the stuff that was coming out of the members' mouth was really disappointing, and I wasn't just going to stand by and cop it. I just talked to a few of them throwing out some pretty big allegations, and I just pulled them up on it.
This was the incident that sparked the fire.
Oh, now this is going to be interesting.
Before the ball had been deemed dead by the umpire, quick-thinking keeper Alex Carey caught his English counterpart, Johnny Bairstow, napping. The stumping was certainly within the rules of the game, but whether it was within its spirit is now at the centre of furious debate.
If the shoe was on the other foot, I would probably just have to have a little think around the sort of whole spirit of the game and things like that. So, look, it's happened, it's out. Is it going to affect relations between the teams? Well, I can't imagine we'll be having a beer anytime soon, if that's what you're asking.
The Australian captain defended Carey's actions and the decision not to withdraw the appeal.
I thought it was totally fair play. That's how the rule is. I know some people might disagree.
Yeah, you see Johnny do it all the time. He did it day one to Davey Warner. He did it in 2019 to Steve. It's a really common thing for keepers to do.
So there you have it, ladies and gents. The umpires were correct there in giving Johnny Bairstow out stumped. Why? Because the fielding side had not considered the ball dead. The bowler's end umpire had not called over. Johnny Bairstow left his crease early, and quick thinking by the Australian wicketkeeper Alex Carey, he was able to stump Johnny Bairstow out. Arguments that it was not within the spirit of the game. So at club cricket level, we as umpires would ask the captain if they would consider withdrawing the appeal. In this case, Australia obviously didn't withdraw the appeal, and Johnny Bairstow was rightly adjudicated out stumped because the over had not been called by the bowler's end umpire. The ball was alive.
Yeah.
So when do we call and signal dead ball? Either umpire shall call and signal when intervening in the case of unfair play. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball for a possible serious injury to a player. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when leaving his or her normal position for consultation. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when one or both bails fall from the striker's wicket before the striker has had an opportunity to play the ball. If the striker is not ready for the delivery of the ball, and if the ball is delivered, makes no attempt to play it, provided the umpire is satisfied that the striker had adequate reason for not being ready, the bowlers and umpire shall call and signal dead ball, and the ball shall not count as one of the over. So we have two more quiz questions for you. This one is to do with an injury. Quiz question number 3. So type in Q3. And then the question here is, are we going to call and signal dead ball because of a serious injury to a player, or are we going to allow the run out? I'm going to, again, play it without sound, and you need to fill in your answer in the chat box. Q3, is Mohammad Wasim seriously injured? Are you going to call and signal dead ball for a serious injury, or are you going to let play continue and for Ireland to run out the captain of UAE, Mohammad Wasim? The ball has hit his glove. He's wringing his hand. He calls for the physio. The fielder notices that the striker is still outside of his crease and proceeds to run him out. Type into the chat box now, Q3 dead ball or Q3 run out. Next quiz question. Mark Watt of Scotland bowling from quite far back. You can see he's about 2 meters behind the stumps, and he's bowling to Khalid Kale. Question here is Khalid Kale out bowled, or do we call and signal dead ball because Khalid Kale was not ready for the delivery? Let's have a look at the video, and then you can post your question post your answer into the chat box.
I've been bowling from an extended distance as far as Khalid Kale was concerned. That was a bridge too far.
I'm not sure about that, America's dead ball given. I know, you can't have it in a row.
Well, Mark Watt not happy, and he says, how's that? It's been signalled dead ball by the umpire. Richie Berrington's come across and Matt Cross as well. That's the second time in the over.
Well, the batter's looking up, he's ready. And to me, that is a legitimate ball. The ball is live. As soon as the batter has placed his bat down and faces up, looks up to the bowler, he's ready to go.
Q4 out bowled or Q4 dead ball? Please type your answer into the chat box now. When else do we need to call and signal dead ball? If the striker is distracted by any noise or movement or in any other way while preparing to receive or receiving a delivery, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. This shall apply whether the source of the distraction is within the match or outside it. The ball shall not count as a legal delivery in the over. If there's an instance of deliberate attempt to distract the striker, or if there is a deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of either batter, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball, and that ball shall not count as one legal delivery in the over, even if it is delivered. If the bowler drops the ball accidentally before delivering it, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. It's usually the bowler's end umpire who calls and signals dead ball in this scenario. If the bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before entering his or her delivery stride, I mentioned it yesterday when we were looking at Tino Best bowling from behind Gregory Braithwaite in the Caribbean Premier League a few years ago. Then the striker's end or either umpire can call and signal dead ball, but probably the striker's end is in the best position because that throw might come from behind the bowler's end umpire. If the ball does not leave the bowler's hand for any reason other than attempting to run out the non-striker, then either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. If the umpires are satisfied that the ball in play cannot be recovered, then either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. This used to be, before 2017, a law on its own called lost ball. This refers to a ball that is not retrievable inside the field of play. Say, for example, there's a manhole inside the field of play. The ball goes into the manhole, and when the fielders go towards the manhole to retrieve the ball, they notice that a snake is inside that hole and nobody wants to go close to that manhole. Then the umpires need to call and signal dead ball because the ball is still within the field of play and the batters will probably be still running. Because it cannot be retrieved or recovered, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball and the batters cannot carry on running from that point onwards. If either umpire considers that either side has been disadvantaged by a person, animal, or other object within the field of play coming into contact with the ball, then they shall call and signal dead ball. However, remember, if I mentioned earlier that if a ball was going to go for 4 and it hit a dog, then the bowlers and umpire can call and signal boundary 4. But if it wasn't going to go for 4, then we need to call and signal dead ball. If the striker attempts to play the ball and no part of his or her person, whether grounded or raised, remains within the pitch, then we need to call dead ball. And this sometimes goes hand in hand with a no ball law that Abdullah will explain to us after our break. If either umpire is required to call and signal dead ball under any of the laws not included above, then we shall do as required by those laws by calling and signaling dead ball. It is now 16:39. Thank you very much for your attendance so far and your interaction with the quiz questions. We will go through those quiz questions after Abdullah has presented laws 21 to 24. We shall take a 11-minute break and restart again at 16:50. Thank you so much. We will chat soon for the rest of the lecture. See you later.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for rejoining us after our short break. My name is Abdullah Steenkamp. I will be covering laws 21, 22, 23, and 24. After completing law 24, we will then go into our chat group, look at the answers to the quiz questions, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. So law 21 covers no ball, and we're going to focus on as per the laws of cricket, what is seen as no balls? We're going to cover a few of those instances as per the laws. You will find in some playing conditions for certain competitions across the world that they've added some no balls. Like example, in 2020s or 50 over competitions, they want certain amount of fielders to be in the circle at certain times, and if not, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Those are playing conditions that was added by the governing body for that competition. What we're going to focus on are what are no balls according to the laws of cricket. I want to kick off by starting with the mode of delivery. So it's important for the umpire, when the bowler hands his or her cap to you, the bowler's in umpire needs to ask the bowler whether he or she is going to bowl right-handed or left-handed. And then also, you, the bowler's in umpire, need to ask the bowler whether he or she is going to bowl over or around the wicket. And then, after obtaining that information, you then need to inform the striker. In the next slide, we will go into a bit more detail. What is over or around? When is a bowler bowling over? When is a bowler bowling around the wicket? You'll be amazed how many bowlers don't know this. Even sometimes batters are confused when you say bowlers bowling over. They'll constantly ask you which side is over. In the next slide, we'll go over when a bowler is over or around the wicket. So you need to ask the bowler, right hand or left hand, over or around. You then need to relay that info to the striker. So batter, bowler's bowling right arm over the wicket, as an example. So now the law sees it as unfair if the bowler changes his or her mode of delivery, i.e., after informing you that the bowler is bowling right or left-handed, suddenly, let's say the bowler informs you, I'm bowling right-handed, right arm over the wicket. And then suddenly the bowler bowls with the left arm. The law sees that as unfair. And if a bowler do change their mode, let's say from right to left-handed or from over to around the wicket, if that is the case, the umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So it's only unfair if the bowler fails to notify the umpire. If the bowler do notify you, let's say the bowler's decided to bowl, he's a right arm bowler, he's bowling right arm over the wicket, you relay that to the striker. The bowler now informs the umpire, I want to bowl round the wicket. No problem, you'll say thank you. You then need to inform the striker. So it's not unfair if the bowler informs you and then you inform the striker. It's only unfair if the bowler changes a mode, i.e. bowling from right to left or from over to round without informing the umpire. So another example, let's say a bowler is tells his he or she's bowling right arm over the wicket, and then 3 balls later the bowler tells you, umpire, I want to bowl left arm around the wicket. Can that happen? Yes, it can happen. Bowler can bowl with whatever hand they choose, as long as they inform the umpire, and the umpire in turn needs to inform the striker. So if a bowler do change their mode, you need to call and signal no ball. Underarm bowling is not permitted according to the laws of cricket. There are exceptions. And if a special agreement was made for that competition before the match started, I do know in blind cricket they do bowl underarm, so those are agreements made before the match. That is allowed, but otherwise underarm bowling not to be permitted. Also, the law wants the delivery to be fair, i.e., the ball should not be thrown. I mentioned earlier about in terms of the mode of delivery, bowler informing you that he or she is bowling over or around the wicket. So when is a bowler bowling over or when is the bowler bowling around the wicket? The focus needs to be on the bowler and not the batter. It doesn't matter whether the batter is left or right-handed. That's irrelevant. You focus on the bowler and which side the bowler is going to bowl. And that determines whether a bowler is bowling over or around the wicket. Let's start with a right-hand bowler. Bowler comes to you and his or her cap to you. So let's start with the first picture on your left-hand side. So where the arrow is pointing, that's where the batter, the striker is standing. Again, it's irrelevant whether the striker is left or right-handed, doesn't matter. You focus on the bowler. So the arrow, that's where the striker is standing. The start of the arrow, that is where the bowler is coming from. So if you can visualize, this is now a right-handed bowler. So visualize the ball in the bowler's right hand. So I remember where the bowler is bowling over or around the wicket, I look at where the the ball is in relation to the stumps. If the bowling hand, i.e. in this example, the right hand, is further away from the stumps, then the bowler is bowling right arm round the wicket. So just visualize ball in the bowler's right arm. So the left arm is closer to the stumps and the right hand, that which the ball is in, is further from the stumps. If that is the case, bowler is bowling right arm round the wicket. If you look at the second pick from your left, still a right hand bowler, and visualize again, ball in the right hand, which hand is now closer to the stumps. Now the right hand in which the ball is in, that hand is now closer to the stumps. And now the bowler is bowling right arm over the wicket. So all you need to look at is which hand the ball is in. If the bowling hand is further from the stumps, bowling round. If the bowling hand is closer to the stumps, the bowler is bowling over the wicket. Same principle applies to a left arm bowler. You look at the bowling hand. Is it closer to the stumps, or is that bowling hand further away from the stumps? If you look at the first pick, the ball is in the left hand, so the right hand is actually closer to the stumps than the left hand, so the bowler is bowling left arm around the wicket. And if you look at the last pick on your right, still a left arm bowler. If you visualize it, the left hand is, which the ball is in, is closer to the stumps. Now the bowler is bowling left arm over the wicket. So when it comes to the feet, and this happens in every single game, at every single level, you need to understand how to interpret the feet when you need to call a no ball. So when it comes to the feet, the law distinguishes between the front foot and the back foot. So let's start with the back foot. So when it comes to the back foot, there's a crease that goes with the back foot. And what is the name of this crease? It is the return crease. So back foot of the bowler, you need to look at the return crease. And all the law tells us is the back foot needs to land within, and it should not be touching the return crease. So back foot, land within, not touching the return crease. If that is the case, it's a fair delivery. So the law looks land within and not touching the return crease. That's the back foot. When it comes to the front foot, which crease goes with the front foot? The popping crease goes with the front foot. And now the law wants the front foot to land with some part of the foot, whether grounded or raised, to be behind the popping crease or on the same side of the imaginary line joining the two middle stumps. Bullet point number 2, I will show you in a later slide. It doesn't happen that often. Hasn't happened to me yet in my umpiring career, but it is a law, and if it should happen, you need to know how to apply it. But bullet point 1 happens every single game at every single level. So when it comes to the front foot the popping crease goes with the front foot, and the law wants some part of that front foot, whether grounded or raised, to be behind the popping crease. And if not, you need to call and signal no ball. Let's look at a few pictures, and we will then see how to apply the law when it comes to the feet. So visualize, this is a right arm bowler bowling over the wicket. So let's look at the front foot first. The question that you need to ask when it comes to the front foot, is there any part of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease? And so importantly, you need to look at the back edge of the popping crease and not the front edge of the popping crease. In later pics, we will illustrate this clearly. But for now, front foot, is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? In this instance, yes, so we're happy with the front foot. The back foot, is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes, the back foot is touching the return crease. That's why this is a no ball. Let's start with the front foot. Any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, we're happy with the front foot. Back foot, any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, it's not. You'll see the foot is in the air, although it is over the return crease, but it's not touching the return crease. That's why this is a fair delivery. You need to visualize, and this bowler is bowling left arm around the wicket. So let's start with the back foot. Is there any part of the back foot, whether grounded or raised, is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, it's not, so we're happy with the back foot. Front foot, which crease goes with the front foot? The popping crease. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? Yes, it is. So that's why this is a fair delivery. When I started my umpiring career, I actually thought this was a no ball. I say, yeah, but look, it's on the other side of the return crease. But the questions that I need to ask myself is, when it comes to the front foot, is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the popping crease? That's the only question. If it meets that criteria, it's a fair delivery when it comes to the front foot. The foot that goes with the return crease, the crease that goes with the back foot is the return crease. So the question that you need to ask yourself when it comes to the back foot, is the back foot touching the return crease? And in this instance, no. That's why this is a fair delivery. Start with the front foot. Is left arm again around the wicket. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? Yes, it is. So we're happy with the front foot. Back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes, it is. That's why this is a no ball. Let's now start with the back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, not. So we're happy with the back foot. Front foot. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? I want to again emphasize, you do not look at the front edge of the popping crease. You need to ask yourself, is there any part of the front foot, grounded or raised, behind the back edge? And in this instance, yes, there is a small part of the front foot behind the back edge. That's why this is a fair delivery. Back foot, any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, we're happy with the back foot. Front foot, any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's not. That's why this is a no ball. Back foot, any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, so we're happy with the back foot. Any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? No, there's no part of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a no ball. Before I move on, I want to emphasize the following. When it comes to the feet, especially the front foot, you need to look at first landing. That is when you judge or when you need to ask yourself the question. Upon first landing, is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? If your answer to that question is yes, fair delivery. If it's no, you need to call and signal no ball. So you need to judge first landing. You'll often find bowlers front foot sliding, where if you look at this pick, this is where they end up. If I can just go 2 picks back, let's say this was first landing. So upon first landing, there was a portion of a part of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. And after the front foot landed, this is where it ended up. So you do not judge where it ends up. You need to judge it upon first landing. And if this was first landing, it's a fair delivery. If this was first landing, then you need to call and signal no ball because there's no part of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. Back foot, touching the return crease? No. Is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, there is a small portion of the front foot. That's why this is a fair delivery. Back foot, we're happy with the back foot because it's not touching the return crease. When it comes to the front foot, any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's no part behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a no ball. Earlier, I mentioned that if a bowler do put their foot across the imaginary line from wicket, from middle stump to middle stump, and I want you to visualize this is a left arm bowler bowling over the wicket. So look at where this left arm bowler puts his or her front foot. So it's left arm over, and the front foot is way on the other side. Now the law say because it's on the other side of the imaginary line, this is a no ball, and the reason is this bowler is now changing mode of delivery. So instead of now bowling right arm over the left arm over the wicket, this bowler is now, according to the law, bowling left arm around the wicket. Doesn't happen that often, this type of delivery. I haven't had it in all my years of umpiring, but it is in the law, and if it should happen, you need to know how to apply it. So what happens if a bowler breaks the wicket while delivering the ball? The law wants either umpire to call and signal no ball if the bowler breaks the wicket at any time after the ball comes into play and before the bowler completes the stride of the delivery stride. So if you can visualize bowler running in, and while delivering the ball, the bowler puts the wicket down with any part of the bowler's person, whether it's the hand, whether it's the foot, any part of the person. Bowler puts the wicket down, 1 or 2 balls falls to the ground while the bowler is delivering the ball. Either umpire needs to call. The bowler's in umpire is in the best position, but the law tells us either umpire can call it. You need to call and signal no ball. So any part of the bowler's person. The law includes any clothing or object that might fall from the bowler's person and falls onto the wicket and puts the one or both bails down, i.e. breaks the wicket. So any clothing, you'll often find bowlers bowling with those small hand towels. If while that bowler is delivering the ball, that hand towel falls onto the stumps, putting a bail or one bail or both bails on the floor, that wicket is down. The law wants you to call and signal no ball. But it needs to be the bowler's person, any part of the person, or any clothing or object. If it's the wind, the bowler's running in, and suddenly there's a gust of wind, and the wind puts the bails down, you should not be calling and signaling no ball because the law wants it to be any part of the person of the bowler or clothing or an object. But if it's the wind, You're not to call and signal no ball. What happens if a ball bounces more than once or the ball rolls along the ground? The law wants the umpire and the strikers in umpires in the best position to call this, because the strikers in umpires got a side-on view. So the law allows either umpire to call it, but the strikers in is in the best position because of the side-on view. So the strikers in umpire needs to call and signal no ball if the ball was delivered and didn't touch the bat or person, and this ball bounces more than once before reaching the popping crease. So if the ball bounces a second time before reaching the popping crease, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Strikers N is in the best position to call it. Or if the ball that was delivered starts rolling towards the striker before reaching the popping crease. If this is the case, umpire needs to call, strikers and is in the best position to call and signal no ball. So the law does not want the ball to bounce a second time before reaching the popping crease. It can bounce a second time after the popping crease, but not before the popping crease. If it rolls along the ground before the popping crease, you need to call and signal no ball. Also, if it pitches wholly or partially off the pitch before reaching the striker's wicket, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. In this case, the bowlers in umpire is in the best position to call it, because the bowlers in umpire will have a front-on view, and the bowlers in umpire will be in the best position to see whether it pitches wholly or partially off the pitch. No, so the emphasis here is it needs to bounce off the pitch before the striker's wicket. And if that is the case, bowlers in umpire needs to call and signal no ball. If a ball that was delivered, it causes the striker to leave the pitch, or the ball comes to rest in front of the striker's wicket. Now the law wants you, the umpire, to call and signal no ball, and a split second later call and signal dead ball. These two calls are done within a split second of each other. So you'll call and signal no ball, and split second later, you call and signal dead ball. Let's just look at an example which happened in a Division 2 game last season. I'll play it again. So just look at the ball was delivered and look at where it bounced, and look at the batter, where the batter is going to play the ball. I'll play it again. So the ball bounced a second time before reaching the popping crease, and the batter had to leave the pitch to play the ball. So in this instance, you need to call and signal no ball, and immediately after that, call and signal dead ball. What happens if a fielder intercepts a delivery? And this refers to if you can visualize spinner bowling and you have a short leg fielder, let's say a silly mid-off, standing under the helmet close to the batter, just off the pitch. So the spinner bowls and the ball is a bit wide, and the spinner and the short leg fielder, silly mid-off fielder under the helmet, obviously standing close. The ball then goes against the foot of this silly mid-off fielder. So this is what this law means, fielder intercepting a ball. So if a ball was delivered and it made contact with any part of a fielder's person, before it makes contact with the striker's bat or person, or the ball passes the striker's wicket, umpire needs to call and signal no ball, and immediately call and signal dead ball. Again, this is two signals, but it's quick after each other. You call and signal no ball, split second later, you call and signal dead ball. There are other instances also, according to the laws, that are nobles. Position of the keeper. There are limitation of how many fielders you can have behind square on the onside. Fielders not to encroach on the pitch. Bowler bowling dangerous short pitch balls or non-pitching deliveries. I'll have a few pictures now in the next slide that will show this. So this is an example, and you'll see the keeper hands in front of the stumps. If a keeper encroaches onto the pitch, if a keeper's hands come in front of the stumps, strikers in umpire, which is in the best position, needs to call and signal no ball. The law wants, if the ball touches the striker, a bat or person, or the striker attempted a run, or the ball passed the strikers or passes the stumps, then the keeper can come in front of the stumps. But the keeper should remain wholly behind the wicket at all times, except for those three instances. So this is, according to the law, a no ball. And let's assume the ball didn't touch the bat or person of the striker. The keeper in this instance had to wait for the ball to pass the stumps and then take off the bails and stump the striker. But because the keeper was in his haste, took the ball in front of the stumps, strikers in umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So just to confirm again, a keeper needs to stay wholly behind the wicket from the moment the ball comes into play. But there are three exceptions. If the ball touches the bat or person of the striker, then the keeper can come in front. If the striker attempts a run, no problem. Keeper can now come in front of the stumps. If the ball passes the striker's wicket, then the keeper can come in front. But otherwise, keeper always to stay behind the wicket from the moment the ball comes into play. So this is an example of a no ball. Another example of a no ball, the law wants on the onside, and this is a right-hand batter, a max of 2 fielders behind square, behind the popping crease on the onside. In this example, there are 3 fielders behind the popping crease or behind square on the onside or leg side. And that is why, according to the laws of cricket, that's why this is a no ball. It's only allowed a max of 2 fielders behind square, behind the popping crease on the leg side or onside of the batter. Fielders are also not allowed to encroach on the pitch. They're only allowed to come onto the pitch if the ball passes the bat of the striker or if the ball touches the bat or person of the striker. You can see here in this instance, the striker is about, this bowler is coming in to deliver the ball. It's almost about to deliver the ball, but the fielder is already onto the pitch. If this happens, you need to call and signal no ball. But just a practical tip: lots of players don't know the law. Yes, technically this is a no ball, but I'm a proactive umpire. If I do see this, and I know lots of players don't know the law, I will have a word with the fielder and just tell the fielder, just move half a meter to your right so that you are off the pitch. I do try to help the fielder. If later on, over 2 later, the fielder stands like this after I've informed him, then you can call and signal no ball. But I try to help the fielders because most of them don't know the law. Question 5. So in the chat box, I want you to put whether the striker is out bowled or if this is a no ball. I'm going to play the video 3 times.
Oh, bowled him. I want going upstairs.
This is over the waistline, yeah, and I think he's got a strong case.
I'll play it again.
Oh, I bowled him. I wonder if it's a no ball. Well, we're going upstairs for this. We're going upstairs.
This is over the waistline, yeah, and I think he's got a strong case.
So in the chat box, please put on out bowled, or do you think it's a no ball? Revoking a call of no ball, umpire to revoke a call of no ball. If dead ball is called, no ball to override a wide at any time. You can find instances where you'll have a call of no ball and wide of the same delivery. The law tells us that no ball is boss. So if there's a wide and a no ball of the same delivery, no ball is boss. So you'll take a no ball. Ball not dead on the call of no ball. So batters can still be dismissed. What is the penalty for a no ball? There's a 1-run penalty for a no ball. It will be added to the score, and any boundary allowances also to be added, and any other runs ordered for penalties also to be added to the score. No ball to not count as one for the over. And how can you be dismissed of a no ball? There are 9 ways. There are 9 modes of dismissals. But as soon as either umpire called no ball, there are only 3 ways to be dismissed of a no ball. What are they? Hit the ball twice, obstructing the field, and run out. So as soon as no ball is called, these are the only 3 modes of dismissals our batter can be dismissed. Wide ball. So how do you judge a wide? And again, we're focusing on modern cricket. I don't want you to get confused with T20 or 50 over cricket. And if you see on TV, there are many instances. There are wide guidelines drawn on the pitch, or wide lines. And those lines help the umpires consistently call wides. And that's a playing condition that was added for T20 and 50 over cricket, those wide lines. But when it comes to modern cricket, how do you judge a wide? If you see a test match, you won't see those wide lines in a test match. So in modern cricket, how do you judge a wide? The law guides us. The law tells us the criteria that we need to take into account is ball passing wide of the striker, standing in a normal batting position. So that's the basic criteria that you need to take into account. Striker standing in a normal batting position and ball passing wide of the striker. Just listening to this, it can be a bit vague. What is passing wide of the striker? The law goes on by saying, and it gives us the interpretation of what is considered passing wide of the striker. So the law interpretation is the ball is wide of the striker unless that ball is sufficiently within the reach of the striker to hit the ball by the means of a normal cricket shot. So now we know what the criteria is when judging a wide in modern cricket. If it passes wide of the striker, and that ball is so wide that the striker is not able to hit it by the means of a normal cricket shot. If the answer to that question is yes, you need to call and signal wide. If the answer to that question is no, it's then a fair delivery. So there's no lines, it is a judgment call, and you need to make that judgment by asking yourself, is this ball so wide of the striker that he or she is not able to hit it by the means of a normal cricket shot? If yes, wide. If not, fair delivery. So after judging a ball to be wide, you'll call and signal wide, but the law tells us you need to wait until the ball passes the striker's wicket before calling and signaling wide. Do not call wide too early. I can remember early in my umpiring career, it was a spinner bowling, but it was so wide. And then what the batter did was, the batter late cut the ball literally out of the keeper's hands and he went to the third man boundary for 4. So I was so in a hurry to call wide. Yeah, I'm calling wide, signaling wide, but meanwhile the striker late cut the ball out of the keeper, literally out of the keeper's hands to the third man boundary. I had a bit of egg on my face because I'm standing with my arms out wide, calling wide, but meanwhile from the middle of the bat it went down to the third man boundary. So the law guides us by telling, don't be in a hurry to call and signal wide. Wait until the ball passes the striker's wicket. Make sure that there's been no contact with the striker's bat or person. So in terms of calling, we need to wait until the ball passes the striker's wicket. But technically, according to the law, the ball is considered to be wide from the instant that the bowler enters his or her delivery stride. When does the bowler enters his or her delivery stride? When that back foot lands. So technically, that is the moment that the ball is wide already. But in terms of calling and signaling it, wait until it passes the striker's wicket. I mentioned earlier that you need to, I've just mentioned that you need to wait until it passes the striker's wicket because you need to make sure that there's been no contact with the between ball and the striker's bat or person. If you did call it too early, you need to revoke your call of wide. Also, the law guides us by telling us there is an instance where the delivery will not be a wide. And what is that? If the striker by moving, you often see it on TV, the striker moving around in the crease. So now again, you need to use your judgment. And if the striker by moving now brings the ball within his or her reach, and the striker can now play the ball with the means of a normal cricket shot, please do not call and signal wide. Ball not to be dead on the call of wide. 1 run penalty for as soon as you call wide. And also, if there is any additional runs, if you do go to the boundary, that would all will count. If they do a run off a wide, that also to count. So in terms of how the runs are scored, all runs completed by the batters or if a boundary allowances, together with the 1 run wide penalty for the wide, to be scored as wide balls. Wide not to count as one of the valid balls for the over, i.e. that ball needs to be rebowled. And how can you be dismissed off a wide? There are 4 ways to be dismissed off a wide. So out of the 9 mode of dismissals, as soon as either of the umpires call wide, there are only 4 ways that a batter can now be dismissed. Okay, what are those 4 modes of dismissals off a wide? Firstly, hit wicket. Secondly, obstructing the field. Thirdly, run out. And the 4th way how you can be dismissed off a wide is stumped. The penultimate law that I'm covering this evening. What is the difference between a bye and a leg bye? Let's first cover what are byes. So a bye is a ball that was delivered by the bowler. And the criteria that needs to be in place for a bye is it goes past the striker without touching the bat or any part of the person. So that is the criteria that needs to be taken into account when it comes to byes. And this is the only criteria or the only question that you need to ask yourself. The ball now went past the striker, and let's say it went past the keeper. And did the ball touch the striker, bat or person? If no, and it goes past the keeper and they run, this is seen as byes according to the law. So the only question that you need to ask yourself when it comes to byes, did it touch the bat or person of the striker? If no, the batters can run. Lots of players think they add another criteria to this by saying there must be a shot. When it comes to buys, it's playing a shot is not a criteria that needs to be in place. We'll see in the next part when it comes to leg buys. Now it's playing a shot comes into play. But when it comes to buys, the only question that you need to ask yourself: did the ball touch the batter, the striker, or bat, or any part of the person? If no, and they run, those runs that gets or accrued, whether it's a boundary or whether it's a 1 or 2 or 3, they get added to the score as buys. If the delivery was a no ball, the no ball to count and will be added into the scorebook as a no ball extra. So again, to emphasize, when it comes to buys, should not touch the bat or person, and if they do run, those runs should be allowed, and they will be credited as buys in the scorebook. When it comes to leg buys, so let's see what conditions needs to be in place when it comes to leg buys. So a ball that was delivered, and the ball strikes the person or protective equipment of the striker. So this is now the first part that needs to be met, the first part of the criteria. The ball was delivered and it strikes any part of the person or protective equipment. So whether it's the foot, whether it's the leg, the tummy, any part of the protective equipment. And now there are 2 conditions now that needs to be met. And these conditions needs to be met for leg buys to be scored. So we know if the ball needs to strike any part of the person or protective equipment. But leg buys only to be scored if the following 2 conditions are met. First condition is the batter or the striker needed to attempt to play the ball with his or her bat. There needs to be a stroke needed to try to play the ball with the bat. And the second condition is the striker tried to avoid being hit by the ball. If these 2 conditions are met, i.e., yes, the striker attempted to play with the ball with the bat. Yes, the striker tried to avoid being hit by the ball. If this is the case, leg buys to accrue to the score. So when it, again, to summarize, when leg buys to be scored, if it strikes any part of the person or protective equipment, and the umpire is happy that the striker attempted to play the ball with the bat or tried to avoid being hit by the ball. If the delivery was a no ball, that no ball to count and will be added to the score as no ball extras. So now we know the conditions that needs to be in play for leg buys to be awarded. So when should leg buys not be awarded? So we've just covered what the conditions are for leg buys to be awarded. So for leg buys to not be awarded, it's just the opposite. So what are those? If the umpire considers that there was no attempt by the striker to play at the ball with his or her bat. Another way of putting it, the striker needs to offer a shot. There's no shot offered at the ball, leg buys to not be awarded. Or if the striker did not try to avoid being hit by the ball, leg buys not to be awarded. So when it comes to leg buys not to be awarded, this is where the no stroke offered comes in. So if a striker didn't attempt to play at the ball with the bat, i.e. didn't offer a shot, ball hits any part of the person, and usually most of the time it hits the pad and the ricochets, because no shot was played or striker didn't try to avoid being hit by the ball, this leg buy should not be awarded. So technically, as per the law, the striker should not attempt any run, because those runs should not be allowed. But a lot of times, and you see it at all levels of cricket, from international right until the lower leagues, the batters do run. They don't offer a shot, but yet, and the ball ricochets, let's say, to fine leg, but yet lots of them still run. Yeah, there's lots of them that don't, but lots of them still run. So the law allows for those stupid batters that do run and they're not supposed to run, the law actually allows for the fielding side to run out these two stupid batters. So now if they do decide to run, don't call dead ball too early, because the law wants you to give the fielding side an opportunity to try to run out these stupid batters. They're not supposed to run. And if they do decide to run, don't call dead ball too early. Delay that call of dead ball until they've completed one run. So if the ball ricochets to the fine leg boundary and they complete one run, as soon as that one run is completed, the umpire needs to intervene by calling and signaling dead ball. Don't let them run a second or a third or a fourth. On the completion of the first run, you need to intervene by calling and signaling dead ball. Or if the ball goes over the boundary, let's say it ricochets, batter not offering a shot, ricochets off the pad and goes over the boundary, that boundary also not to count. So they've now, let's say they ran a single. So as soon as they've completed the single, you need to call and signal dead ball. There's more work for the bowlers in umpire. The bowlers in umpire needs to disallow all runs. That run not to count. And the reason is the leg pass should not be awarded. The batter didn't attempt to play at the ball, didn't offer a shot. So you need to disallow those runs. Return any not out batters. They need to go back to the original end. So if call and signal dead ball, you need to tell the batters, go back to your original end. If there was a no ball, you need to signal that to the scorers. Any award of 5 penalty runs that is applicable to be added to the score, except penalty for protective helmets belonging to the fielding side. Last law that I'm covering this evening is substitutes and fielders absent. We're going to start with substitutes. So what is a substitute fielder, and when can the umpires allow a substitute fielder? The law guides us by telling us the umpires can allow a substitute fielder if they are happy that a fielder has become injured or ill, and that this injury or illness occurred during the game. Fielder cannot bring an injury or an illness into the game. You need to be satisfied that the fielder became injured or ill during this particular game. If that is the case, you'll allow a substitute fielder. You can also allow a substitute fielder for a wholly acceptable reason. As soon as you've allowed a substitute fielder, the substitute cannot bowl, cannot bat, cannot act as captain. You can allow the substitute to act as a wicketkeeper, but for the substitute to act as a wicketkeeper, you need the consent of the umpires. What happens if a fielder is absent or leaves the field of play while play is now in progress? So the lawmakers tighten up this law because players abused this law many years ago. Players would fake injuries. Let's say the opening bowler would bowl a 5-over spell, would fake an injury, would go to the umpire and say, umpire, oh, my hamstring. Umpire would say, okay, fine, let's go get treatment. Meanwhile, there's nothing wrong with the hamstring. The opening bowler just want to get his or her feet up, take a rest. They would then be off the field for an hour, come back, then bowl their second spell. Players abuse this law. Not just fielders, batters also abuse this law. Close to the side is 8 or 9 down, the opening bat would go off to go put his or her feet up to go rest before the start of the innings. So because of the abusing of the law by players, the lawmakers tightened this law. And let's see what they did. So the lawmaker said, okay, if a fielder comes to you and tells you he or she is injured and needs to leave the field of play, they need to come to the umpire and they need to inform the umpire why they need to leave the field. They need to come and say, umpire, I've injured my hamstring or my back, whatever the case may be. I need to leave the field to go get treatment. No problem. What the umpire needs to do, and I'm giving you a bit of practical tips as well. Umpire needs to take out their notebook, write down, let's say, Wendy going off for hamstring treatment at, let's say, 10:30. So you need to write down who, you need to write down the reason why she's leaving, and the time that Wendy's leaving. We'll see now why timing is so important when we get to point number 3. Then you need to also tell Wendy that's now leaving the field. Wendy, when after treatment, when you do come back, want to come back onto the field, please inform the umpires that you are now coming back, because the law wants the before the injured player comes back, either of the umpires needs to give consent. We need to know when Wendy's back. And we'll see now why it's important to know when Wendy's back. So in point 1, we wrote down Wendy off, reason and time. So we need to know when Wendy's back, because we also need to write down the time that Wendy came back. So Wendy, let's say, left the field at 10:30. She's back at 11 o'clock. And you write it down. Now, point number 3. Now, this is where the lawmakers tighten the law because of the abusement of players of this law. So now the lawmakers decided that, yes, players injured will allow him or her to go off. But now, once they come back after receiving treatment, they're not permitted to bowl until they've been on the field for the same amount of time that they've been off the field of play, up to a max of 90 minutes. So I'll use an actual example to illustrate how this works. So in our example, Wendy, that left the field at 10:30. She received treatment. She came back at 11 o'clock. So you wrote down, you gave at 11 o'clock, you gave Wendy consent to come back onto the field. Now, practically, what you now need to tell Wendy is, Wendy, you now need to work out how long has Wendy been off, and that's why the timings are so important. So Wendy went off at 10:30, came back at 11 o'clock. So Wendy was off for 30 minutes. So now the law tells us, before Wendy can bowl, she needs to field for 30 minutes. She needs to be on the field for 30 minutes before she is allowed to bowl again. So in our example, if Wendy needs to be on the field for 30 minutes, when can she bowl? She can only bowl at 11:30. So we need to inform Wendy, Wendy, you need to be on the field for half an hour, so you can only bowl at 11:30. We'll also inform a captain, Wendy can only bowl at 11:30. So this is how the lawmakers tighten this law by, yes, we'll allow a player to get treatment, but the amount of time that you are off, you need to field, you need to be on the field for that same amount of time before you can bowl again, up to a max of 90. So how did this max of 90 work? Let's say Wendy goes off to have treatment to a hamstring at 11 o'clock, and she only comes back later the afternoon at 3 o'clock. I'm just using round numbers for illustrative purposes. So Wendy's been off the field for quite a while. But the law says there's only a max of 90 minutes. So even though Wendy was off the field for 3 hours, which is 180 minutes, she only needs to serve 90 minutes before she can bowl again. Max penalty time of 90 minutes. So if Wendy return at 3 o'clock, if there's a max of 90, even though she was off for 3 hours, Wendy can bowl again at 16:30. That's how the max of 90 minutes works. If a player leaves the field before having served all their penalty time doesn't disappear. It gets carried forward. Unserved penalty time gets carried forward. Lots of players think in test matches it disappeared if you go into the next day, into the next innings. Penalty time doesn't disappear. You need to serve all your penalty time before you can bowl or bat. Sometimes players go on and off lots of times. You need to add up all those penalty time that they've been off. And if it's been multiple times, you need to add them up, all up. And you need to constantly keep the player informed of how many unserved penalty time they still need to serve before they can bowl. Scheduled intervals like your lunch or your tea does not count for or against the fielder. I'll use an example. Let's say our lunch in our test match is at 12 o'clock. At 11:50, the Wendy goes off. We take lunch at 12 o'clock. So at the start of lunch, how much penalty time does Wendy owe us? Wendy owe us 10 minutes. She's been off from 11:50 till 12 o'clock. So we restart at 12:40. Wendy then joins the team, her team, upon the resumption after lunch. So how much penalty time does Wendy owe us? When can Wendy bowl? Wendy only owes us 10 minutes. So if we play restart at 12:40, Wendy can bowl at 12:50. Why only 10 minutes? The law tells us you do not add scheduled intervals to the penalty time of a player. In a scheduled interval, there is no play in progress. Everyone is off the field. And that also tells you what the definition of penalty time is. Penalty time, the definition is time that a player needs to serve that he was not on the field while play is in progress. That is the definition of penalty time. So in my example, you will not add the 40 minutes to Wendy's 10 minutes. You won't say after lunch, Wendy now owes us 50 minutes. It was lunchtime. There was no one on the field. Wendy only owes us 10 minutes, so she can bowl at 12:50 again. I mentioned earlier about penalty time doesn't disappear. Lots of players think, day one, they still owe us 60 minutes. Now next day, that penalty time disappear. Doesn't disappear. Sometimes they think, next innings, first innings, I owe 50 minutes. Second innings, no worries, umpires will write it off. No, it gets carried over into the next day and into the next innings. Obviously, it doesn't get carried over into the next game. But next day or next innings of this match, penalty time does not disappear. And lastly, before I hand over to Tom, there are instances where penalty time will not be incurred. We will not penalize a fielder and ask him or her to serve penalty time. Before I go into this, remember the reason why the makers tightened this law a bit was players starting to abuse the law. They would fake injuries. They would fake umpire hamstring, groin, back spasms. And it's difficult for us, to see. How can you see a hammy? How can you see a groin injury? How can you see back spasms? Difficult for us to be able to see it. So in those type of injuries, penalty time needs to be served. But lawmakers also recognize that there are instances where something happens, and let's look at what are those instances where penalty time not to be incurred. Firstly, a fielder suffered an external blow during the match. And because of this external blow, that fielder needed to leave the field. The emphasis here is on external blow. An example of this is, let's visualize short leg fielder. The spinner bowls a short ball, batter pulls the ball straight into the knee of the short leg fielder. Ball went against the knee of the fielder. Fielder then needs to get treatment, then leaves the field, comes back an hour later. Now, this is an example of an external blow where ball went against the fielder's knee. Yes, the fielder was off for an hour, but that fielder does not have to serve any penalty time. That fielder, upon return an hour later, can bowl immediately. Yes, this external blow happened on the field while play was in progress in front of the umpires. We saw ball went against knee. External blow. Other examples, ball gets hit to gully. Fielder dives, gets hand to it, hand bleeds or doesn't have to bleed, always bleed, but you saw ball go against hand. Fielder goes off to get treatment, to put some ice on it. Fielder off for half an hour. External blow, ball against hand. No penalty time to be served in those instances. All you need to ask yourself is, while play was in progress on the field of play, was it an external blow? If yes, no penalty time to be incurred. And lastly, also no penalty time to be incurred if a player was absent for a wholly acceptable reason. Just quickly, a wholly acceptable reason is, let's say, you will often find in Cricket South Africa's provincial competition, some of the players being students studying at the tertiary institution, and they need to write exam on a Saturday morning. The exam is, let's say, from 9 till 1. So usually what will happen is they will get a letter from the tertiary institution informing Cricket South Africa that player X is writing an exam. That letter gets given to the master referee. The master referee will then keep it in his or her file. So that player was off the field for the whole morning session. Let's say they come back after lunch. Yes, they were off the field for 2.5 hours, but upon the return after lunch, that player can bat or bowl immediately. And the reason for this is that is seen as a wholly acceptable reason why that particular player was not on the field for Saturday morning, i.e. was writing an exam. Thank you so much, everyone. Tom, I'm handing back over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. And we're going to go straight into the questions that we asked during our presentation. I'm going to share my screen again, and we will be replaying some of the videos for us to understand the law better and to be able to confirm the correct answer to the quiz questions. So the first quiz question I asked you was to do with a bouncer being bowled by a fast bowler. And this bouncer bounces once and goes sharply towards the striker's head. The striker tries to play a shot, misses it with both bat and gloves, and the ball hits the helmet and flies over the boundary into the stands without being grounded within the field of play. So which two signals does the bowler's end umpire make for this incident? The law displayed in front of us gives us the answer. It says that a boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. So in this scenario, has the ball been struck by the bat? No, it has not. Shot was played but missed. The only contact with the striker was off the top of the helmet. And so as per the definition of leg buys that Abdullah has just taken us through, it is a leg buy. So that's our first signal, leg buys. The second signal will not be boundary 6 because a boundary 6 can only be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. Lower down on this slide, it tells us that a boundary 4 will be scored if the boundary has not been struck by the bat. So, believe it or not, interestingly enough, even though the ball flies over the boundary rope without bouncing within the field of play into the pavilion, we need to signal boundary 4. So the correct answer for this scenario is signal leg buys and then signal boundary 4. Okay, a boundary 6 can only be struck from the bat, so this cannot be a boundary 6. Moving on to quiz question number 2. I will play the sound for this one because the commentators describe it pretty well.
So if he's been planted when he takes the catch again outside the rope, it's 6. So if he makes the first contact from where he jumped inside the rope, and then when the last contact is made, he's back inside the rope, it's out. So as long as when he threw it up a second time, his feet were in the air, his last point of contact has to be back in. So when he's outside the boundary rope, when he takes the ball again, his feet must be in the air when he throws it up again. Effectively, he can throw it up 300 times as long as his feet are in the air.
The law tells us that The first contact with the ball needs to be within the field of play, and the last contact with the ball also needs to be within the field of play for a catch to be completed fairly. And you will have noticed that when he juggled the ball outside of the field of play, his feet were off the ground, so he was not grounded outside of the field of play when he made contact with the ball. Therefore, the answer to quiz question number 2 is out court. A raging debate amongst cricket players, commentators, and coaches. But as per the law, that is currently out court. Next quiz question is this appeal by the Irish team against Mohammed Wasim of United Arab Emirates. The ball hits him on the glove. He signals to the physio to come and help him. However, you can see at that particular point in time, after the ball has hit his glove, he is actually resting on the hands. If a batter or anyone else is seriously injured on the hand, he or she would not put weight on that hand. So I do not consider this a serious injury. Neither did the umpires on the match day consider this a serious injury. Therefore, they allowed play to continue, and the striker was run out. A serious injury we would consider if a striker or any fielder or any player for that matter is hit on the head by quite some force by the ball. If the player is screaming from pain, if the player is hit off balance by the force of the ball, and if there's any blood involved in the injury, then we can consider the injury as a serious injury, in which case we would call and signal dead ball. None of those examples of a serious injury were present in this particular scenario. That is why Mohammed Wasim was rightfully adjudicated run out in this scenario. Quiz question 4. I'll play it without sound while I talk you through it. Mark Watts is a spin bowler from Scotland who is famous for bowling from behind the bowling crease, and he does it exactly to try and achieve what he's done there against Khalid Kale, which is to catch the striker off guard and unready to face the delivery. Law tells us that if the striker backs away and does not play a shot because he or she feels they are not ready, then the umpire, the bowlers and umpire, will call and signal dead ball, and we'll find out the reason for the striker pulling away. And the reason here is that the striker wasn't expecting Mark Watts to bowl from where he bowled, and so it was a genuine incident of the striker not being ready. Strikers do have to be ready when the bowler is at the top of his or her mark. So then, as an umpire, we would tell Khalid Kale in this scenario that he needs to be ready earlier to avoid time wasting. But the correct answer here is call and signal dead ball. Quiz question number 5. Is this out bowled or is this a no ball? I'll play it without sound while I talk through it. The law is pretty clear on this. It's not in law 21, the no ball that Abdullah took us through. It's actually in law 41, unfair play. Law 41.7, the bowling of non-pitching deliveries is considered to be unfair if the ball gets to the striker above waist height with the striker standing upright at the crease. And you can see here that the striker is actually on his toes when he plays this shot, and the ball is definitely above his waist. So this was correctly called and signaled as a no ball by the TV umpire. The protocol is for tight calls like this, the on-field umpires should not make the call in a televised game. If the striker is out caught, or in this instant out bowled, then the decision will be reviewed by the TV umpire to check. It's much easier for him or her to see if the ball is above waist height with the striker standing upright at the crease. And in this case, the decision was no ball. So I hope you've all learned something from those quiz questions. I see most of you got them correct. Well done. Keep learning. Keep asking questions when you're not sure. And we will keep providing you with more scenarios in future lectures. Let me now go to the chat box to see if there are any more questions. It doesn't seem as if they are. I do not see any more hands raised in the meeting room. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your attendance and interaction today. We will convene again on Monday, the 25th of November at 15:30, 3:30, for our third and final lecture. And we will be joined by Cricket South Africa International panel umpire Lubabalo Guma, commonly known as Bubs. And he will take us through his journey as an umpire from the very beginning until he got appointed onto the international panel. So I hope you will all join us for that. And until then, I wish you a great week further. Thank you and goodbye.